High Scholar Veltus had always been curious. Too curious, his teachers said. Too eager to touch things that should remain untouched. But curiosity had made him one of the youngest scholars in the Nulori Dominion, and today it had led him to the edge of the Forbidden Zone, the Sol System. Earth System? The Dead Zone. His small research ship floated near the outer boundary, where ancient warning beacons drifted in the darkness. Each beacon carried the same message in 100 different languages. The words were simple and clear. Do not wake them. Veltus had read about the humans in old books. Every child in the Dominion grew up hearing stories about them. They were monsters, the stories said. Demons wrapped in metal skin. They had burned worlds and erased entire species from existence. But that was long ago. 800 years had passed since anyone had seen a human. Most scholars believed they were extinct. Just another dead species in a galaxy full of dead species, but Veltus was not most scholars. His sensors had detected something strange near the system's edge. A small object, no bigger than a transport pod, drifting alone in the void. It was old. Very old. And it was clearly not natural. Veltus guided his ship closer. The object was a probe of some kind, covered in strange symbols he did not recognize. Its surface was dark and smooth like polished stone. There were no lights, no signs of power. It looked dead. He should have reported this to his superiors. He should have called for a proper research team. But Veltus was curious, and curiosity does not like to wait. He extended his ship's mechanical arm and touched the probe. Nothing happened. He tried again, this time sending a small pulse of energy into the probe's surface. For a moment there was silence. Then, deep inside the probe, something clicked. A tiny light appeared on its surface, red, blinking. Veltus felt his heart beat faster. He had activated it. After 800 years, he had woken something up. The probe made a sound. A low hum that grew louder and louder. Then it sent out a signal. A single pulse of energy that shot across the darkness of space, aimed directly at the third planet from the sun. Earth.velt is watched the signal disappear into the void. He waited for something to happen. Minutes passed. Then hours. Nothing changed. The probe went dark again, as if it had used all its remaining power for that one single message. He let out a breath he did not know he was holding. It was nothing, he told himself. The signal had gone to a dead planet. There was no one left to receive it. He was wrong, far away. On the dark side of Earth's moon, something stirred. The lunar base had no name. The humans who built it had simply called it the Cradle. It was buried deep beneath the surface, hidden from all sensors, invisible to all eyes. For 800 years, it had been silent, dark, waiting. The signal reached it in less than 3 minutes. Deep inside the base, old machines began to wake. Lights flickered in hallways that had not seen light in centuries. Power flowed through cables that had been cold for generations. And in the heart of the base, in a chamber the size of a small city, row after row of metal pods began to hum. Inside each pod was a human, frozen, preserved, sleeping. The long sleep of those who had nothing left to wait for except war. The first pod to open belonged to Admiral Kangte. He was an old man, though his face did not show it. The stasis technology had kept him exactly as he was the day. He entered the pod, strong, sharp, ready, but his eyes held the weight of memories that would crush most men. He had seen things, done things that made the monsters in children's stories seem kind. The pod's lid slid open with a soft hiss. Cold air rushed out, and Tay took his first breath in 800 years. It hurt. Everything hurt. His muscles screamed as he forced them to move. His mind struggled to focus through the fog of deep sleep, but he was a soldier. Pain was an old friend. He pulled himself out of the pod and stood on shaking legs. Around him, other pods were opening. His officers, his crew, his family in a way. They were all waking up. A screen on the wall flickered to life. Numbers and symbols scrolled across it, telling a story Tay did not yet understand. He walked toward it, each step steadier than the last. By the time he reached the screen, he was moving like the warrior he had always been, The screen showed him everything. 800 years had passed. Earth was still there, but it was empty now. The other humans, the ones who had stayed behind, were gone. Only the fleet remained. Only the soldiers in the pods. Only the weapons that had been built to end wars before they could begin, and someone had sent them a signal. Captain Park Hannah appeared at his side. She was younger than Tay, but her eyes held the same hardness, the same understanding of what they were and what they had been made to do. "Admiral," she said. Her voice was rough from centuries of silence. "What are your orders?" Tay stared at the screen. Somewhere out there, beyond the moon, beyond the system, someone had woken them up. Someone had made a terrible mistake. He turned to face his captain. His voice was calm and cold, like the void of space itself. "Find out who sent that signal," he said. "And find out if they meant it as a greeting or a threat?" Hannah nodded and walked away to begin her work. Tay looked back at the screen. The stars stared back at him, cold and uncaring. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity. They had become stories to frighten children, myths, legends, ghosts, but ghosts do not stay dead forever, and humanity had never been very good at staying quiet. The cradle was waking up, and it was not a gentle process. Admiral Kongte walked through the massive underground base, watching as thousands of stasis pods opened one by one. Men and women stumbled out, confused and weak, their bodies struggling to remember how to move after 8 centuries of sleep. Medical teams moved between them, helping the fallen, checking vital signs, giving injections to speed up recovery. 120,000 soldiers. That was how many the fleet carried. 120,000 of humanity's finest warriors, scientists, engineers, and pilots. They had volunteered for this mission knowing they might never wake up, knowing that if they did wake up, it would mean something terrible had happened. Now they were awake. And none of them knew why. Tay entered the command center, a circular room filled with screens and control panels. His senior officers were already there, gathered around a large holographic display that showed the solar system. Captain Park Hannah stood at the main console, her fingers moving quickly across the controls. Lieutenant Yunde was checking the fleet's power systems. Commander SEO Mina leaned against the wall with her arms crossed, watching everything with sharp, careful eyes. And Dr. Cho Hyan was studying data on a smaller screen, his old face twisted with concentration. "Report," Tay said. Hannah spoke first. "All 47 ships are operational, Admiral. Minor damage from time decay, but nothing our repair systems cannot handle. The fleet will be ready for full deployment within 6 hours. Day nodded in agreement. "Power cores are stable. Weapon systems are charging. The graviton cannons will be online in 4 hours. The reality anchors in 5. He paused, his voice becoming quieter. "The silence protocol is ready now." It never went offline. The room became very still. Everyone knew what the silence protocol was. It was humanity's final weapon. A device that could erase matter from existence. Not destroy it. Not break it apart. Simply remove it from reality as if it had never been there at all. They had used it once at the end of the last war. An entire planet had vanished in less than a second. They had promised never to use it again. "Keep it locked," Tay said. "We do not use that weapon unless there is no other choice." Day nodded, relief visible on his face. Dr. Hyan looked up from his screen. "Admiral, I have analyzed the signal that woke us. It came from a probe we left at the system's edge. Someone activated it. The probe sent an automatic response back to us." "Accident or intention?" Tay asked. "Unknown. But whoever activated the probe is still out there. Their ship has not moved." Commander Mina finally spoke. Her voice was soft but dangerous. "One ship. Easy to capture. Easy to question." Tay shook his head. "Not yet. We need more information first." He turned to Hannah. "What do we know about the galaxy? What has happened in 800 years? Hannah pulled up data on the holographic display. Star maps appeared, covered in colors and symbols that Tay did not recognize. "I have been intercepting communications from across the region. It took time to decode their languages, but I have learned much. She pointed to a large section of the map colored in deep purple. This is the Nalori Dominion. They control most of what we used to call the Orion Arm, over 2,000 worlds. Millions of ships. They appear to be the dominant power in this part of the galaxy. And Earth? Tay asked. Hannah's expression darkened. They call it the Dead Zone. It is forbidden space. No one goes there. No one even talks about it. Why? Because of us, Admiral. Hannah looked at him with something close to sadness. They remember what we did. The war against the Vrekan Empire. How we destroyed 300 worlds in 8 years. How we broke their civilization so completely that nothing remained. She paused. They are afraid of us. So afraid that they quarantined our entire system and put up warning beacons telling everyone to stay away. Tay absorbed this information in silence. He remembered the war. He remembered the fire and the death and the endless fighting. He remembered what they had become to win, monsters, weapons in human form. Creatures that even their enemies called nightmares. What do they think happened to us? He asked. They think we are extinct, Hannah said. They believe we destroyed ourselves after the war. We are just stories now. Legends used to frighten children. Mina laughed softly. Then they are about to get a very unpleasant surprise. Tay raised his hand for silence. He stood still for a long moment, thinking. The galaxy had moved on without humanity. New empires had risen. New powers had claimed the stars. And somewhere out there, a young alien had accidentally poked something he should not have touched. We will not reveal ourselves yet, Tay said finally. We will watch and learn. I want to understand this Nalori Dominion before we make any decisions. And if they find us first? Mina asked, then we will respond appropriately. The meeting ended and the officers returned to their duties. The fleet continued its slow awakening. Ships that had been cold for 800 years began to warm up. Engines that had been silent began to hum. Weapons that had been sleeping began to charge. Mina walked to the observation deck. A small room with a window that looked out at the stars. The view was the same as it had always been, cold, empty, beautiful, but Mina knew that the emptiness was a lie. The galaxy was full of life, full of civilizations that had grown fat, and comfortable in humanity's absence. They had forgotten what humans could do. They had forgotten the fear. Mina smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator watching prey that did not know it was being hunted. They forgot about us, she whispered to the stars. Good, fear is always stronger when it comes without warning. Far away on his small research ship, High Scholar Veltus stared at his sensors in disbelief. Something was happening on Earth's moon. Energy readings were spiking. Heat signatures were appearing. Things that had been dead were coming alive. He had made a terrible mistake, and deep inside his chest, he felt the first cold touch of fear. High Scholar Veltus had never been so afraid in his life. He sat in the command chair of his small research ship, watching the readings on his screen with growing horror. Something was happening on Earth's moon? Energy signatures that should not exist were appearing across the surface. Heat blooms were spreading through underground structures that no one had known were there. And the signal he had accidentally sent was still echoing in his memory like a curse. He had to tell someone. He had to warn the Dominion. His hands shook as he opened a communication channel to the nearest military outpost. The face that appeared on his screen belonged to Overlord Krath, the supreme military commander of the Nalori Dominion. Krath was old and powerful, with scales that had turned gray from centuries of war and politics. His eyes were cold and hard like stones at the bottom of a frozen river. Speak, Krath commanded. Veltus told him everything. The probe. The signal. The energy readings. The things waking up beneath the moon's surface. Krath listened without expression. When Veltus finished, the Overlord was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed. You have been reading too many old stories, Scholar, Krath said. The humans are dead. They destroyed themselves 800 years ago. There's nothing on that moon except dust and rocks. But the readings are errors, malfunctions, old machines breaking down after centuries of neglect. Krath waved his hand dismissively. Go home, scholar. Forget about this. And do not waste my time with fairy tales again. The screen went dark. Veltus stared at the empty display, his heart's pounding. Krath did not believe him. No one would believe him. The humans were supposed to be extinct. Everyone knew that. Everyone believed that, but the readings did not lie. 2 days later, Overlord Krath was not laughing anymore. Despite his dismissal of Veltus's report, he had sent a scout fleet to investigate. 12 warships, each carrying enough firepower to destroy a small moon. They entered the Sol system with weapons ready and shields raised. Expecting to find nothing but empty space and ancient debris, they found something else entirely. Admiral Kang Te watched the alien ships on his command screen. 12 vessels arranged in a standard defensive formation, moving slowly toward the moon. Their design was elegant, he admitted. Smooth curves and flowing lines like artwork made from metal. Their weapons were powerful by galactic standards, capable of devastating cities and cracking planetary surfaces, but they were not powerful by human standards. They are scanning the moon, Captain Hana reported. They will detect our energy signatures within the hour. Tay nodded. He had expected this. The awakening of the fleet had not been quiet, and anyone looking closely enough would see the signs. The question was how to respond. Options? He asked. We could destroy them, Lieutenant Day offered. One ship could handle all 12. Or we could hide, Dr. Hyun suggested. Go back to minimum power and hope they think the readings were a mistake. Commander Mena shook her head. Hiding will not work forever. They know something is here now. They will keep looking until they find us. She looked at Tay with steady eyes. We should send a message. Show them what we are. Let them decide what to do with that information. Tay considered this. Mina was right. Hiding was no longer an option. But revealing the entire fleet was too dangerous. He needed something smaller. Something that would make a statement without starting a war. One ship, he said. The Silent Blade, Commander Mina, you will lead the intercept. Show yourself. Speak to them. See how they react. Mina smiled. It was the smile of a wolf about to hunt. And if they react badly? Then show them why that was a mistake. The Silent Blade was a destroyer, small by the standards of the Black Horizon fleet, only 300 meters long with a crew of 200. But it carried weapons that could break planets and shields that could stop stars. It was built for one purpose, to end fights before they began. Mena took the captain's chair and gave the order to move. The ship rose from its hiding place behind the moon and flew directly toward the alien fleet. Its cloaking systems kept it invisible until the last moment. Then, when it was less than 1,000 kilometers from the lead alien vessel, Mina gave a single command. Decloak. The Silent Blade appeared from nothing, like a ghost materializing from thin air. Its hull was black as night, covered in angles and edges that seemed to swallow light. Its weapons ports glowed with barely contained power. The Nilori fleet reacted with panic. Alarms screamed across all 12 ships. Weapons turned toward the impossible vessel. Commanders shouted orders that made no sense. Mina opened a communication channel. She spoke in the old galactic common tongue, the language that had been used for diplomacy before humanity's long sleep. You are in human territory, she said. Her voice was calm and cold. State your intentions or leave. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the lead Nilori ship opened fire. Plasma bolts and energy beams slammed into the Silent Blade from all directions. The barrage was impressive, enough firepower to melt through mountains. The Nilori commander watched his screens. Expecting to see the strange black ship torn apart, the Silent Blade did not move. It did not shake. It simply absorbed the attacks, its graviton shields drinking in the energy like water into sand. When the barrage ended, the Silent Blade was completely undamaged. Mina felt something close to pity. These aliens had no idea what they were facing. They had lived for so long without a real threat, that they had forgotten what true power looked like. "You made a mistake," she said into the communication channel. Then she fired one shot. A single beam of white light from the main cannon. It struck the lead Nilori's ship and passed through it like a blade through paper. The ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only scattered atoms drifting in the void. The 11 remaining ships did not wait to see what would happen next. They turned and ran, engines burning at maximum power, desperate to escape the nightmare that had appeared before them. Mela let them go. She watched them flee on her screen, her expression thoughtful. They would return to their masters. They would tell them what they had seen. And the fear would spread. Back on the Eternal Wrath, Admiral Tay watched the fleeing ships disappear into the distance. His face showed no emotion, but inside he felt the weight of what had just begun. "Let them run," he said quietly. "Let them tell the Dominion what they saw. Let them remember what fear feels like." The galaxy had forgotten about humanity. It was time to remind them. The Nilori homeworld had not seen such panic in over 1,000 years. Overlord Krath stood in the Great War Chamber, surrounded by screens showing the footage from the Scout Fleet's encounter. He watched the recording again and again, unable to believe what his eyes were telling him. A single ship, one small vessel, had destroyed his finest warship with a single shot. And it had let the others escape. That was the part that frightened him most. It had let them go. On purpose, the humans were sending a message. "This is impossible," one of his generals said. "The humans are extinct. Everyone knows this. Then explain what I am seeing." Krath roared. He pointed at the screen where the black ship hung motionless, ignoring the barrage of weapons fire like it was nothing more than rain. "Explain that ship. Explain that weapon. Explain why 11 of my vessels fled like frightened children." No one could explain. No one had answers. Ambassador Yenny stepped forward. She was the head of the diplomatic corps, a soft-spoken female with silver scales and wise eyes. She had spent her life building peace between worlds that wanted war. Now she faced the greatest challenge of her career. "Overlord," she said carefully, "perhaps we should consider communication before conflict. The humans spoke to our ships before firing. They warned them. This suggests they may be open to what?" Krath interrupted. "Talking? Negotiating? These are the creatures that destroyed the Vrekin Empire. 300 worlds burned to ash in less than a decade. You want me to negotiate with that?" Yenny remained calm. "I want you to consider all options. War with an unknown enemy of unknown strength is foolish. We do not know how many ships they have. We do not know what weapons they carry. We do not even know what they want." Krath turned away from her. He stared at the screen for a long moment, his mind working. Then he made his decision. "Mobilize the fleet," he said. "All of it. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have. We will crush this threat before it grows. We will show the galaxy that the Nilori Dominion fears nothing." Yenny closed her eyes in despair. "This is a mistake. It is my mistake to make," Krath replied. "Now go. Prepare for war." 3 weeks later, the largest fleet in Nilori history gathered at the edge of the Sol system. 10,000 warships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons charged and their crews ready. It was a force capable of conquering entire civilizations. It was the pride of the Dominion, assembled for one purpose: to wipe the human threat from existence. Admiral Kongte watched them come. He stood on the bridge of the Eternal Wrath, surrounded by his officers. The holographic display showed the enemy fleet in perfect detail. 10,000 ships against 47. The numbers seemed impossible. Any sane commander would surrender or flee, but the Black Horizon fleet had never been commanded by sane people. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Captain Hanna said. "Weapons charged. Shields at full power. Crews at battle stations." Tay nodded. "Lieutenant Day, status on the reality anchors?" Day checked his console. "Ready to deploy on your command." Once activated, they will lock approximately 3,000 enemy ships in place. They will not be able to move, retreat, or activate faster than light engines. Good. Tay turned to Commander Mina. Your boarding teams? Ready and eager, Mina replied with a cold smile. I have identified the enemy flagship. I will take it personally. Then we begin? Tay took a breath. All ships advance. The Black Horizon fleet moved forward like a pack of wolves entering a field of sheep. They were outnumbered 200 to 1, but they did not slow down. They did not hesitate. They flew directly into the heart of the enemy formation. Overlord Krath watched from his flagship with growing confusion. What are they doing? They cannot possibly think they can win. But they did think that. Because they knew something Krath did not. The battle began. Lieutenant Day activated the reality anchors, and across the battlefield, 3,000 Nilori ships suddenly stopped. Their engines still burned, their weapons still fired, but they could not move. They were locked in place by forces they could not understand. Trapped like insects in amber, the remaining 7,000 ships tried to respond, but the human fleet was already among them. Captain Hanna coordinated attacks with impossible precision. Each human ship moved like it knew exactly where every enemy would be. They fired at weak points. They exploited gaps in formation. They turned the Nilori's superior numbers into a disadvantage, making them shoot at each other as often as they shot at humans. Ships exploded by the hundreds. Then by the thousands, Commander Mina's shuttle cut through the chaos like a blade. Her boarding team was small, only 50 soldiers, but they were the best humanity had ever produced. They crashed into the side of Krath's flagship and cut their way inside. What followed was not a battle. It was a lesson. Mina moved through the ship like a ghost. Her team followed in silence, their weapons making no sound, their movements leaving no trace. Nilori soldiers fell without understanding what had killed them. Guards turned to face threats that were already behind them. Officers tried to call for help, but found their communications cut. In less than 30 minutes. Mina reached the bridge. Overlord Krath stood alone, surrounded by the bodies of his guards. His weapon shook in his hands as he aimed it at the human female who had come for him. What are you? He whispered. Mina did not answer. She moved faster than his eyes could follow, and before he could fire, she had taken his weapon and forced him to his knees. The battle is over, she said calmly. You lost. Outside, the fighting was ending. The Nilori fleet was broken. 6,000 ships destroyed. 4,000 more captured or disabled. The humans had lost nothing. Not a single ship. Not a single life. Admiral Tay watched the final surrenders come in. He felt no joy in this victory. Only a cold, heavy sadness. He had not wanted this fight. He had not asked for this war. But when threatened, humanity had only one response. Complete and total victory. They brought Overlord Krath to the eternal wrath in chains. He was forced to kneel before Admiral Tay, his once proud scales now dull with fear and defeat. We did not want this war, Tay said quietly. You came to our home. You brought your weapons. You fired first? He leaned closer, his eyes hard as stone. You brought this destruction upon yourself. Krath looked up at him with hatred and terror mixed in his eyes. What will you do now? Destroy our worlds as you destroyed the Vrakin? Burn our civilization to ash? Tay was silent for a long moment. Then he stood straight and looked out at the stars. That, he said, depends entirely on what happens next. The news of the battle spread across the galaxy like fire. 10,000 ships destroyed or captured. The greatest military force in the Dominion's history, broken in less than 2 hours. And the humans had not lost a single vessel. Not one. Civilizations that had never heard of Earth began to search their oldest records. They found stories, legends, warnings written by species long dead, telling of creatures from a small blue world who had once burned their way across the stars. The humans had been nightmares made real. And now they were awake. Ambassador Yenny arrived at the Eternal Wrath 3 days after the battle. She came alone, without guards or weapons, carrying only a simple white flag, the symbol of surrender. The symbol of peace, Admiral Kongte received her in the ship's council chamber. His officers stood around the room, watching the alien diplomat with careful eyes. They had won the battle, but they all knew that wars were not won with weapons alone. Yenny bowed low before the admiral. Her silver scales caught the light as she straightened, and her voice was steady despite her fear. "I speak for the Nilori people," she said. "We offer our complete surrender. We will accept any terms you demand. We ask only for mercy." The room was silent. Captain Hannah shifted uncomfortably. Commander Mayna's hand rested on her weapon. Lieutenant Day stared at his feet. They all expected the same thing. More war, more destruction. More death, but Tay surprised them. "Stand up, Ambassador," he said quietly. "I do not want you on your knees." Yenny rose slowly, confusion visible on her face. "I did not wake up from 800 years of sleep to build an empire," Tay continued. "I did not keep my people frozen in time so that we could become conquerors. We are soldiers. We fight when we must. But we do not fight for power. We do not fight for glory." He paused, his old eyes distant with memories. "We have done terrible things. We burned worlds. We erased civilizations. We became the monsters that everyone feared. And when the war ended, we looked at what we had done and we felt nothing but shame." He walked to the window and stared out at the stars. "That is why we put ourselves to sleep. We hoped that by the time we woke up, the galaxy would have forgotten us. We hoped that we would never need to fight again." He turned back to Yenny. "Your overlord took that hope from us, but I will not let his mistake turn us back into what we once were." Yenny's eyes widened. You will not destroy us?" "No," Tay shook his head. "But there will be conditions. Earth and the Sol system will be human territory. Any ship that enters without permission will be destroyed. Any attack against humanity will be met with overwhelming force. In exchange, we will not expand. We will not conquer. We will not interfere with galactic affairs." He met her eyes with a steady gaze. "We will be your neighbors. Nothing more. Nothing less." For a long moment, Yenny could not speak. She had expected death. She had expected the end of her civilization. Instead, she was being offered peace. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." 1 week later, a galactic summit was called on a neutral station at the edge of known space. Representatives from dozens of civilizations attended, all of them terrified of the human fleet that had appeared from nowhere and broken the mightiest military in the galaxy. Admiral Tay addressed them personally. He stood before the assembly in his old uniform, his voice calm and clear. "We did not ask to be woken," he said. "We did not want this conflict. But when our enemies came for us, we did what we have always done. We survived." He looked across the gathered faces, seeing fear in everyone. "I know what you think of us. You think we are monsters, destroyers, demons from the darkness between stars. And perhaps you are right. Perhaps we earned those names." He paused, letting his words settle. "But today I offer you a choice. You can fear us. You can hate us. You can spend the rest of your lives waiting for us to come and burn your worlds. Or you can accept that we are here, that we want only peace, and that we will keep to ourselves as long as you keep to yourselves." His voice hardened. "But know this, if you threaten us again, if you send your fleets against our home, if you force us to fight, we will remind you why the galaxy feared us in the first place." The summit ended with a new treaty. The Sol system was declared human territory, protected and sovereign. The warning beacons were updated with a new message: "The humans live. Do not disturb them." High Scholar Veltus was brought before Admiral Tay on the final day. The young alien who had started everything stood trembling before the human commander, certain that his life was about to end. Tay studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "You look terrified," Tay said. I am," Veltus admitted. "I woke you. I caused all of this. Thousands died because of me." "Yes," Tay agreed. "They did." He stepped closer to the young scholar. "But you also gave us something valuable. You gave us a second chance. 800 years ago, we put ourselves to sleep because we did not trust ourselves to live among the stars. We were too dangerous, too broken. We thought sleeping forever was better than risking what we might become. He placed a hand on Veltus's shoulder. You woke us up and showed us that the galaxy has changed. New civilizations have risen. New possibilities exist. And now we have a chance to be something different. Something better. He removed his hand and stepped back. Thank you for that, scholar. Use your life wisely. Veltus left the human ship in a daze. Still not quite believing he was alive, the Black Horizon fleet returned to Earth's orbit. For the first time in 800 years, human eyes looked down at their homeworld. The blue oceans, the green continents, the white clouds drifting across the surface. It was still beautiful, still alive. Still waiting for them, Dr. Cho Hyun began the long work of rebuilding. There was much to do. Cities to construct, farms to plant, a civilization to resurrect. It would take decades, perhaps centuries. But they had time now. They had peace. Commander Mina stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Wrath, watching Earth turn slowly below. Captain Hannah joined her, and for a while, they simply stood together in silence. Do you think they will ever attack us again? Hannah asked finally. Mina considered the question. Maybe, probably, fear fades with time. New generations will grow up hearing stories about us, and some of them will think those stories are exaggerations. Some of them will think they are stronger than their ancestors. Some of them will want to test us, and when they do? Mina turned to look at her friend. Her eyes were calm, but beneath the calm was something cold and hard. Something that had been forged in the fires of 100 battles and would never truly disappear. And then we remind them, she said softly. We remind them why their ancestors feared us. We remind them why the galaxy put up warning beacons around our home. We remind them what happens when you wake humanity from its sleep. She looked back at Earth, at the blue world that had given birth to the most feared species in galactic history. We remind them, she whispered, that some nightmares never truly end. The fleet orbited in silence, watching over its home. Waiting. Ready. And the galaxy held its breath, hoping they would never have to see what humanity could do when it stopped being patient.